"You'll never stop supporting us," my brother mocked. "You have 30 days to figure out your finances," I said coldly. 7 months later, they called me from a Motel 6. I was 23 when I became the head of our household. Not by choice, but by necessity. One minute I was a young guy with entry-level pay and big dreams. The next, I was shouldering a mortgage, utilities, and the weight of 2 adults who would spend the next 6 years draining me dry. For 6 years, I've been paying my mother and brother's mortgage, utilities, groceries, and more. Last month, I finally stopped. Now they're calling me from a Motel 6, begging to come home. But there is no home anymore, and I'm not sure I care. I'm not writing this for sympathy. I'm writing this because I need to know if I've finally gone too far. Dad's heart attack came without warning. One day he was mowing the lawn, the next he was gone. Mom, Laura, hadn't worked in over 20 years. My younger brother Tyler was in his 2nd year of college, with no job skills and 0 ambition. I had just started at Meridian Logistics, making barely enough to cover my own apartment and student loans. Dad left some life insurance, but not enough. The policy would cover expenses for maybe 6 months. Someone had to keep the lights on after that. "Just until I get back on my feet," Mom promised, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. She'd stopped crying by then. The numbness had set in. "I'll find something part-time." "And I'll get a campus job," Tyler added, though his expression suggested he'd rather eat glass. At first, I didn't mind. We were grieving. We needed each other. I moved back into my childhood bedroom to save on rent, picked up weekend shifts, and funneled every spare dollar into keeping our family afloat. It was supposed to be temporary. It never was. 3 months after Dad died, Tyler totaled his car. He'd been texting while driving, lucky to walk away with just a broken arm. The insurance rates skyrocketed. I took a second job stocking shelves at a liquor store to cover the difference. "It's just temporary, James," Mom assured me, squeezing my shoulder, "until Tyler gets back on his feet." 6 months in, Mom still hadn't looked for work. Her excuses evolved with impressive creativity. First it was grief, then anxiety, then her bad back that never stopped her from playing tennis with her friends every Wednesday. When I pushed her on it, the waterworks started. "Your father would be so disappointed," she'd say, dabbing at tears that seemed to materialize on command. "He always took care of this family." The guilt would hit me like a sucker punch to the gut. I'd back down, work another double shift, and try to ignore the growing resentment burning a hole in my chest. Meanwhile, Tyler dropped out of college after his 3rd year. "It's not for me," he shrugged, as if we hadn't just wasted thousands on his education. He cycled through a series of jobs, each one beneath him somehow. Cashier at Target, too boring. Barista at Starbucks, too early in the morning. Data entry at Dad's old firm, too repetitive. He'd work somewhere for 2 weeks, decide it was beneath him, and quit without notice. Then he'd lounge around the house playing video games until Mom nagged him into applying somewhere else. Despite contributing exactly 0 to the household, Tyler never seemed to go without. Latest iPhone? Check. Designer clothes? Check. Weekend trips with friends? Check. All while I wore the same 3 pairs of jeans until they developed holes. The numbers were staggering. $1,800 monthly mortgage, $400, $600 in utilities, $500 in groceries, more when Tyler's friends raided our fridge, plus car insurance, property taxes, home repairs, and the countless loans that were never repaid. Over $150,000 in 6 years, money I could have used for my own home, my own future. I tried having the hard conversations. God knows I tried. "Mom, I can't keep doing this," I said one night, spreadsheets spread across the kitchen table. "Look at these numbers, I'm drowning." She looked at the papers like they were written in hieroglyphics. "You're doing so well at your job, though. That promotion really helped, and it's not like you have a family to support." That was the real kicker. I couldn't have a family because I was too busy supporting them. Relationships fizzled when partners realized my family would always come first, not by choice, but by financial necessity. I canceled dates to cover Tyler's car payment. Missed weekend getaways to fix the leaking roof. Put my life on perpetual hold because I couldn't save a dime. Tyler was even worse when confronted. "Dude, chill. I'm between opportunities right now. My buddy might hook me up with something in sales next month." Next month never came. I was working 60 hours a week while they complained about my absence. I was surviving on energy drinks and 4 hours of sleep while they criticized my mood. I was having panic attacks in the bathroom at work while they planned vacations I'd end up financing. The irony, They said I reminded them of Dad, the ultimate compliment in their eyes. The comparison made me want to scream. Dad provided for his family because they were his responsibility. I was providing for grown adults who saw me as their personal ATM. My 29th birthday fell on a Thursday. I pulled a double shift because we were short-staffed, then stayed late to finish quarterly reports. No one at work knew it was my birthday. I hadn't mentioned it. I drove home at 10 p.m., exhausted but holding onto a small hope that maybe Mom had remembered. Maybe there'd be a cake, or at least acknowledgement of the day. The house was lit up like Christmas, bass thumping through open windows. For a second I thought they'd thrown me a surprise party. The thought brought tears to my eyes. Maybe they did care. Then I saw the cars lining the street. Tyler's friends. The same ones who ate my food, drank my beer, and never so much as offered a thank you. I found them in the living room. Tyler and 5 of his buddies sprawled across furniture I'd paid for, playing the new PlayStation 5 I hadn't even known he'd purchased. Empty pizza boxes littered the coffee table. Premium bottles of liquor, the kind I couldn't afford to buy for myself, stood half empty on every surface. Mom sat in the corner, laughing at something on her phone. She glanced up when I entered, her smile fading slightly. "Oh, you're home early," she said, as if 10 p.m. after a 14-hour day was early. Something inside me shifted. A tectonic plate of rage and resentment that had been building pressure for 6 years finally slipped. "Do you guys even realize how much I sacrifice for you?" My voice came out quiet, too quiet. The room fell silent, the game paused. Mom sighed dramatically. "Oh, here we go again with the martyr act." Tyler snickered, not even looking away from the screen. "It's not like you're struggling, you make good money." "I make good money that I never get to spend on myself," I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts. "Do you know what today is?" Blank stares. "It's my birthday, my 29th birthday. Did either of you remember?" Tyler shrugged. "We were gonna say something tomorrow, chill out." One of his friends, a perpetual mooch named Dave, had the audacity to laugh. That laugh broke something in me. The final thread of obligation sliced clean through. "I'm done," I said, my voice suddenly steady. "As of today, I'm not paying for anything else. Not the mortgage, not the utilities, not your car insurance. Nothing." That got their attention. Tyler paused his game. Mom put down her phone. "You don't mean that," Mom said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. "I've never meant anything more in my life." Tyler laughed then, a sharp, dismissive sound that cut deeper than he knew. "You'll never stop supporting us. You're too guilty, too responsible. Dad would be so disappointed if you abandoned us." Mom's laugh of agreement was the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. They were right, I would never stop unless I made the decision right then and there. In that moment, looking at their smug, entitled faces, something inside me just broke. All the guilt, all the obligation, all the misplaced responsibility. Gone. "We'll see," I said quietly. I walked upstairs to my room while they resumed their party. I packed 2 suitcases with essentials, clothes, important documents, my laptop. I transferred my portion of the joint account to my private account. I wrote a note with explicit instructions that I would not be providing any further financial support, effective immediately. They were still laughing when I walked out the door. I checked into a Holiday Inn that night. The irony wasn't lost on me. Finally spending money on myself felt like a criminal act. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, waiting for the guilt to crush me. It never came. Instead, I felt hollow, then light, then something close to peace. For the first time in 6 years, I wasn't responsible for anyone but myself. The next morning, I found a small studio apartment and paid 3 months' rent up front. I canceled every automatic payment tied to their expenses. I called each utility company and removed my name. I met with a lawyer who confirmed I had no legal obligation to support my adult mother and brother. Then I sent Mom an email detailing my decision with clear timelines. "You have 30 days to figure out your finances. The mortgage is due on the 1st. Utilities will be shut off if not paid by their respective due dates. I've left enough groceries for 2 weeks." The response was immediate and overwhelming. My phone exploded with notifications. "You can't do this to us." Yes, I could. After everything I've done for you, what exactly had she done for me lately? "You're just like your father, always thinking about money." Dad had worked himself to death providing for ungrateful people. So yes, maybe I was like him after all. The tactics evolved over days. First came rage, then tears, then bargaining, then threats. Mom claimed she'd tell the entire family I was abandoning her. I told her to go ahead. I had bank statements stretching back years. Tyler's approach was more direct. "You're dead to me," followed by, "Can I just get enough for this month's car payment?" Extended family got involved. Flying monkeys deployed to pressure me back into line. Aunt Kathy called to tell me I was breaking my mother's heart. Uncle Steve sent long paragraphs about family obligation. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had opinions about my character. I stopped answering calls, changed my number, went to work, came home to my tiny apartment, and slept through the night for the first time in years. No anxiety about bills, no dread about tomorrow, just quiet. The consequences hit faster than even I expected. Week 1, the internet was shut off. I know because Tyler messaged me from a friend's phone, raging about how he couldn't even game online. Week 3, Mom's car was repossessed. She left a tearful voicemail claiming she couldn't get to doctor's appointments. She didn't have any doctor's appointments. Month 2, the first foreclosure notice arrived. This triggered a new wave of panic. Mom texted that she was in the hospital with chest pains. I called the hospital directly. They had no record of her. Every plea, every manipulation tactic, every lie strengthened my resolve. Every time I felt myself wavering, I remembered that laugh, the casual cruelty of it, the entitlement, the absolute certainty that I would continue to set myself on fire to keep them warm. They showed up at my workplace on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in a meeting when security called. Mom and Tyler were in the lobby causing a scene. Mom was crying. Tyler was yelling, making a spectacle designed to embarrass me into compliance. I asked security to escort them out and went back to my meeting, hands shaking but voice steady. Later, I sent a final email. "Do not contact me again. If you come to my home or workplace, I will file for a restraining order." That night, I cried for the first time since walking out. Not for them, but for the family we could have been. For the support that should have flowed both ways. For the 6 years I'd never get back. 3 months passed in blessed silence. I was promoted at work. All that extra energy previously spent managing their chaos now channeled into my career. I started dadding again. I began therapy to unpack the guilt that still occasionally ambushed me in quiet moments. My cousin Jamie, the only family member who understood my position, gave me occasional updates. The foreclosure process was moving forward. Mom and Tyler had briefly moved in with my grandmother until she'd kicked them out for borrowing money from her purse. They were now staying with a distant relative in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment. Tyler had been forced to sell his PlayStation and designer clothes. Mom had pawned her jewelry. The reality they'd avoided for years had finally caught up with them. "For what it's worth," Jamie told me over coffee, "people are starting to see your side. The stories they're telling don't add up, and everyone knows you supported them for years." I nodded but found I didn't really care about family vindication anymore. For the first time since Dad died, I was saving for my future instead of bankrolling their present. I'd started a 401k. I was researching first-time home buyer programs. I was living my life. 7 months after walking out, I received a text from an unknown number. "The house is gone. We're at Motel 6. Please help us." The old James would have rushed to rescue them. The new James felt a cold wave of something between satisfaction and sorrow. They'd finally hit rock bottom, the place they'd needed to reach for years. I didn't respond, but I asked Jamie to check on them. She reported back that Tyler had finally gotten a job at an Amazon warehouse. The work was grueling, the pay barely enough to cover their motel room. Mom had applied for government assistance. They were, for the first time in years, facing the consequences of their actions. "They're selling the victim's story hard," Jamie said. "But they're finally doing what they should have done years ago, taking responsibility." A year passed. I bought a small condo, started a relationship with someone who respected boundaries, built a life that was wholly mine. I was grabbing coffee at a shop across town when I saw him. Tyler, dressed in a warehouse uniform, looking older and thinner than the last time I'd seen him. He noticed me before I could decide whether to leave. Our eyes met. A year's worth of unspoken words hung in the air between us. He approached slowly, as if expecting me to bolt. "Hey," he said, the single syllable carrying the weight of our collapsed relationship. "Hey," I replied. We stood in awkward silence until the barista called his name. He grabbed his coffee and hesitated, then gestured to an empty table. Against my better judgment, I sat. "You look good," he said, and sounded like he meant it. Thanks, how are you? He shrugged. Getting by, working at the fulfillment center, it's hard, but it's something. And Mom, living with Aunt Susan, got a part-time job at the grocery store. He stared into his coffee. She's not happy about it. The understatement almost made me laugh. Of course she wasn't happy about it. Working had never been part of her plan. You were right, Tyler said suddenly, the words rushing out like he'd been holding them back. We took advantage. I took advantage. He swallowed. I didn't know how to stop. It was so easy to let you handle everything. It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was the closest thing to acknowledgement I'd ever gotten from him. I should go, I said, standing. My break's almost over. Tyler nodded. James, he called as I turned to leave. Dad would have been proud of you setting boundaries. He always said you were the strong one. I froze, tears threatening. Trust Tyler to find the one thing that could still reach me. Take care of yourself, I said, and walked away. I don't know if we'll ever really be a family again. The damage runs too deep, the patterns too established. Mom still believes I abandoned them. Tyler is only beginning to understand the magnitude of their exploitation. But as I drove back to my condo, my space, bought with my money, filled with my things, I realized something important. I'd spent 6 years trying to be the perfect son, the perfect brother, the perfect provider. I'd almost lost myself in the process. Sometimes being a good son means refusing to be a doormat. Sometimes love means walking away. And sometimes the most important person to save is yourself. They're still struggling, still living paycheck to paycheck. Part of me feels guilty, but a larger part recognizes that their struggle now is healthier than their parasitic comfort before. They're finally living in reality, not the consequence-free fantasy I funded for too long. As for me, I'm living for myself now, and for the first time in my adult life, that feels exactly right. I've waited long enough for that house, my mom declared after Grandma's stroke. I gathered evidence to expose her plan. The next day, I found a video. I never thought I'd be the one to tear my family apart, but sometimes the truth has a way of doing that all on its own. My grandmother's 92nd birthday was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it became the night that exposed years of manipulation and lies. I almost didn't go. After years of enduring my mother Barbara's emotional warfare, family gatherings had become exercises in restraint. Every smile forced, every conversation carefully navigated to avoid her traps. But I couldn't miss Grandma Alina's birth. She'd always been my rock, even when Barbara tried to position herself between us. I arrived late intentionally. Easier to slip into an already bustling dinner than to endure the awkward pre-meal small talk. Aunt Carol spotted me first, her face lighting up with genuine warmth. She patted the empty seat beside her, my salvation for the evening. Ethan, you made it. Carol's hug felt like home, the only person in my family who truly saw through Barbara's performance. My mother barely acknowledged my arrival, just a tight-lipped smile before returning to her conversation with my uncle. Fine by me. Grandma Alina reached for my hand across the table. Her fingers were paper-thin, but her grip surprisingly strong. Her eyes still held that sharp intelligence that Barbara often tried to dismiss. My boy, she whispered. So good to see you. Dinner progressed as these things do. Polite conversation, carefully measured laughter, the dance of a family with too many unspoken conflicts. I was counting the minutes until I could make a graceful exit when Barbara's voice cut through the chatter. Well, I've waited long enough, haven't I? It's about time I got that house. My grandmother's house, the beautiful Victorian where she'd lived for 60 years, the one property in our family with any significant value. Barbara had been eyeing it for decades. Mom's still living in it, I said, my voice tight. Or did you forget she's sitting right here? Barbara's laugh was brittle. Don't be dramatic, Ethan. Mother knows she can't manage it much longer. We've discussed this. Grandma Alina's face told a different story. Her eyes narrowed, her mouth set in a firm line. We most certainly have not, she said. Barbara waved her hand dismissively. You're getting confused again, Mother. Remember, the doctor said your memory isn't what it used to be. A classic Barbara tactic, gaslighting in front of an audience, knowing most would be too uncomfortable to challenge her. Not me, not anymore. Grandma's mind is perfectly sharp, I said. Maybe you're the one getting confused about conversations that never happened. Barbara's eyes flashed with anger before she recovered, her face slipping into the wounded mother role she'd perfected over years. I've sacrificed everything for this family, giving up my own dreams to care for Mother. And this is the thanks I get. My own son accusing me of lying. Aunt Carol cleared her throat. Barbara, no one's accusing you of anything, but perhaps this isn't the time or place. Oh, I know exactly what's happening here, Barbara cut her off. Ethan has always resented me, always been ungrateful for everything I've done for him. The familiar script, Barbara as martyr, Barbara as victim, everyone else as ungrateful, selfish monsters. Not tonight. I wouldn't let her ruin Grandma's birthday with her performance. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Since I turned 18, I've been completely financially independent, put myself through college, bought my own car, paid my own rent. Barbara's mouth opened and closed fish-like. This wasn't in her script. You've never understood what real sacrifice looks like, she finally managed. Money isn't everything. Something snapped inside me. Years of pent-up frustration broke through the dam of polite restraint. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and slid it across the table to her. Here's my account balance. I've never asked you for a penny, never will, so please stop pretending I'm after your money or Grandma's house. Her face flushed deep red. The rest of the family stared at their plates, uncomfortable witnesses to our public confrontation. Well, Barbara said, her voice tight with rage, if that's how you feel, then don't expect anything from me. No inheritance, nothing. I laughed, couldn't help it. The absurdity of being threatened with the loss of something I'd never wanted in the first place. Fine by me. Grandma reached for my hand again, squeezing it gently. Her eyes held a mix of sadness and pride. I'd finally done what she couldn't, stood up to Barbara without flinching. The dinner ended shortly after. Awkward goodbyes, half-hearted promises to get together soon. The familiar rituals of a fractured family. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The call came at 2:17 a.m. My cousin Rachel's voice thick with tears. Ethan, it's Grandma, she's collapsed. My heart stopped, then raced. I was in my car before the call ended, still wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt. The hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I found my family clustered in the waiting room. Except Barbara. Where's my mother? I asked, scanning the room again as if I might have missed her. Carol's expression tightened. We've been calling, no answer. The weight of that simple statement settled in my stomach like a stone. Her mother was potentially dying, and Barbara couldn't be bothered to pick up the phone. A doctor approached, his face carefully neutral. The initial tests suggest a stroke. We won't know the extent of the damage until she regains consciousness. If she regains consciousness. The unspoken words hung in the air. Barbara finally arrived at 6:43 a.m., looking remarkably put together for someone who'd supposedly rushed to her mother's bedside. No wrinkled clothes, perfect makeup, not a hair out of place. Where have you been? I couldn't keep the accusation from my voice. She raised an eyebrow. I was sleeping, Ethan. Some of us need our rest. Your mother had a stroke. We've been calling you for hours. Barbara sighed dramatically. My phone was on silent. I came as soon as I saw the messages. The lie was so obvious it was almost insulting. I opened my mouth to call her on it, but Carol's hand on my arm stopped me. Not the time, not the place. Barbara swept past me to speak with the doctor, her voice suddenly trembling with concern. The performance was back on. How is she, doctor? My poor mother, I've been so worried. I turned away, disgusted. Through the window of the ICU, I could see my grandmother. Small, fragile, tubes and wires connecting her to machines that beeped and hummed. A sudden, terrible thought struck me. What if Barbara had been waiting for this? What if her comment at dinner wasn't just her usual selfishness, but something darker? The memory of her words echoed. I've waited long enough. It seemed unthinkable, and yet I caught Barbara's expression as she looked at our grandmother through the glass. Not grief, not fear, something else entirely, something that made my blood run cold. Over the next few days, Grandma Alina stabilized but remained unconscious. I split my time between the hospital and work, determined to be there when she woke up, if she woke up. Barbara's visits were brief, performative. She'd arrive, make a show of distress for the nurses, then leave claiming it was too difficult to see Mother this way. It was during one of these periods between Barbara's visits that Aunt Carol pulled me aside. "There's something you should know," she said, her voice low, "about your grandmother's will." My stomach tightened. "What about it?" "She changed it 6 months ago," I frowned. "Changed it how?" Carol glanced around to ensure we were alone. "The house, she left it to me and the grandchildren, split evenly. Barbara was cut out completely." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. No wonder Barbara had been so eager to discuss inheritance at the birthday dinner. She must have found out. "Does Barbara know?" Carol shook her head. "I don't think so, not officially, but she's always had a way of finding things out. Why would Grandma cut her out?" Carol's expression darkened. She found out Barbara had been stealing from her, small amounts at first, then larger sums, using her credit cards. Alina confronted her, but Barbara denied everything. Said Alina was getting confused, but your grandmother knew the truth. The pieces started falling into place. Barbara's sudden interest in Grandma's health, her comment at dinner, her absence when Grandma collapsed. "We need to protect the will," I said. "If something happens to Grandma." Carol nodded. "The original is at her house, in the safe behind the painting in her study. The lawyer has a copy, but if Barbara gets her hands on the original, she could contest it, claim Grandma wasn't of sound mind." It was exactly the kind of thing Barbara would do, had probably been planning to do it all along. 3 days later, Rachel called in a panic. Someone had broken into Grandma's house. I met Carol there, both of us rushing up the walkway to the beautiful old Victorian that had been in our family for generations. The front door was ajar. Inside, drawers had been emptied, furniture overturned. A systematic search rather than a random burglary. We found the painting in the study on the floor, the safe behind it open and empty. Barbara had gotten there first. "What do we do now?" Rachel asked, her voice small. I didn't have an answer, not then, but I knew we needed to document everything. "Take pictures," I told Rachel, already pulling out my phone. "Every room, every drawer, the broken lock, the empty safe, everything." Carol called the police while I searched for any clues Barbara might have left behind. In her rush, she dropped a receipt near the back door. A gas station just 2 hours earlier. Proof she'd been there. The police arrived within 20 minutes. The detective walked through the house, taking notes and asking questions. Was anything else missing? Did we know who might have done this? We shared our suspicions about Barbara, but without concrete proof, there wasn't much they could do. "Family disputes are complicated," he said with a sympathetic grimace. "Document everything for your lawyer." After the police left, we combed through the house inch by inch. Barbara may have taken the will, but perhaps Grandma had left other evidence. We found bank statements showing unusual withdrawals, credit card bills with charges Grandma couldn't have made, a notebook where she documented her suspicions about Barbara's theft. Each discovery was another piece of ammunition for the legal battle ahead. The call from the lawyer came that evening. Barbara had filed a claim on the house, arguing that Alina wasn't mentally competent when she changed the will. Without the original document, it would be her word against ours. "She's moved fast," said Grandma's attorney. "I have a copy of the will, but without the original and with Alina unable to testify." His voice trailed off. We both knew what it meant, an uphill battle against a woman who'd perfected the art of deception. We hired our own lawyer, who had a reputation for handling difficult inheritance disputes. She didn't sugarcoat our situation. "Barbara has built a compelling narrative," she explained during our first meeting. "She's been telling people for months that your grandmother was confused. She's got friends willing to testify they witnessed Alina forgetting basic information or becoming disoriented." "That's a lie," Carol said, her voice tight with anger. "I believe you," my lawyer replied, "but we need evidence, not just our word against hers." Over the next 3 weeks, we became amateur detectives. I took time off work to interview anyone who'd had regular contact with Grandma, the gardener who came every Thursday, the woman who delivered groceries, her bridge club friends. Many seemed reluctant to get involved. Some admitted Barbara had already contacted them, sharing her concerns about being dragged into a messy legal battle. Barbara's web of influence was extensive. Years of careful cultivation of the right appearances, the right connections. The nurses who'd cared for Grandma during her regular checkups were suddenly uncertain about her mental state. Friends who'd visited regularly couldn't quite remember the specifics of their conversations. Even Grandma's regular doctor seemed hesitant to confirm her cognitive clarity, citing patient confidentiality. I felt powerless, watching her machinery of manipulation grind into motion while Grandma lay unconscious, unable to speak the truth. Then Rachel found the video. She'd been going through old files on Grandma's computer, looking for anything that might help our case. What she found was a recording made just 3 weeks before the stroke. Grandma Alina sitting in her living room with her lawyer discussing her will. Her voice clear, her intentions explicit. "I want the house to go to Carol and my grandchildren," she said on the recording. "Not to Barbara. I've made this decision with a clear mind and full understanding of my actions." The lawyer's voice, "And you understand this is a significant change from your previous will?" "I do. My daughter has betrayed my trust repeatedly. I will provide for her basic needs, but the house must be protected from her." It was everything we needed. Proof that Grandma had been mentally sound when making the change. Proof of her intentions. The day of the hearing arrived. The courthouse loomed large, its stone facade imposing against the morning sky. My stomach churned with anxiety as we climbed the steps. Grandma was still in the hospital, improving slowly but unable to testify. Her absence felt like a physical void in the courtroom, an empty chair where our star witness should have been. We arrived early, my lawyer wanting to review our strategy one final time. Barbara's lawyer was a shark in an expensive suit, known for aggressive tactics and theatrical performances that mirrored his client's own style. "Remember," my lawyer whispered as we took our seats, "Barbara will put on a show. Don't react. Let her dig her own grave." The courtroom filled gradually. Distant relatives I barely recognized. Neighbors curious about the drama. A few of Barbara's friends strategically placed where the judge could see their supportive nods. Barbara arrived last, timing her entrance for maximum effect. She wore a conservative black dress, hair pulled back in a modest bun, playing the part of the devoted daughter in mourning. Her eyes were carefully reddened, not enough to seem hysterical, just enough to suggest recent tears. She didn't know about the video. The proceedings began with opening statements. Her lawyer painted a heart-wrenching picture of a daughter devoted to her ailing mother, cruelly cut out of her inheritance due to Alina's deteriorating mental state. I dug my fingernails into my palms to keep from shouting out the lies. My lawyer's hand on my arm reminded me to stay calm. When Barbara took the stand, her testimony was a masterclass in manipulation. A lifetime of perfecting the art of deception distilled into 45 minutes of expert performance. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue as she described finding her mother confused and disoriented. Her voice broke as she recounted Alina calling her by the wrong name. Tears spilled over when she spoke of the cruel manipulation that had turned her mother against her. The accusatory glance she threw at Carol and me was calculated to perfection. "My mother was already showing signs of confusion when she made these changes," Barbara continued, her voice catching. "She would forget conversations we'd had, mix up her medications. She once left the stove on all night. It broke my heart to see her declining, but I did everything I could to help her." When it was my lawyer's turn for cross-examination, she approached the stand unhurriedly. No dramatic gestures, no raised voice, just calm precision. "You've painted a vivid picture of your mother's declining mental state," she began. "Very concerning." Barbara nodded, a perfect mix of sad and resolute. "When did you first notice these worrying symptoms?" "About a year ago," Barbara replied without hesitation. "Little things at first, forgetting where she put her glasses, confusion about what day it was." My lawyer nodded sympathetically. "And you took her to a doctor for these concerns?" A flash of uncertainty crossed Barbara's face. "I tried, but she refused. She was in denial about her condition." I see, so there's no medical documentation of this cognitive decline. Not officially, no, but anyone who spent time with her could see it. My lawyer consulted her notes. Like her primary physician who saw her every month, Barbara shifted in her seat. He didn't see her the way I did, at home, when she was struggling. My lawyer nodded again, then changed direction abruptly. When was the last time you visited your mother's home prior to her stroke? Barbara blinked, thrown by the change in direction. I visited frequently, at least once a week. So you would have been there on the 15th of last month? I believe so, yes. And during this visit, how would you describe your mother's mental state? Barbara saw the trap too late. She was confused that day, particularly bad. My lawyer approached the bench. Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit C. The bailiff set up the video equipment. Barbara's eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal's. Her lawyer leaned forward, suddenly alert to the danger. What is this? Her lawyer demanded. Evidence, my lawyer replied simply. The screen came to life. Alina appeared, sitting in her living room, the timestamp clearly visible, the 15th of last month, the very day Barbara claimed to have visited and found her confused. Alina's voice rang clear and strong through the courtroom. I want the house to go to Carol and my grandchildren, not to Barbara. I've made this decision with a clear mind and full understanding of my actions. The lawyer's voice from behind the camera. And you understand this is a significant change from your previous will? I do. My daughter has betrayed my trust repeatedly. She has taken money from my accounts without permission, used my credit cards, lied to me about her financial situation. I've given her chances to make amends, but she continues to steal from me. Alina looked directly into the camera, her eyes sharp with clarity and purpose. I am of sound mind. I know exactly what I'm doing. Barbara will receive a monthly stipend for her basic needs, but the house must be protected from her. She would sell it immediately to cover her debts, and my family would lose their heritage. The courtroom was utterly silent. Every eye turned to Barbara, whose face had drained of color. Her carefully constructed facade crumbled in real time. That's not, she stammered. She was confused. She was coached to say these things. You just testified you were there that day and found her confused. Yet here she is, demonstrating remarkable clarity. Can you explain this discrepancy? Barbara looked to her lawyer for rescue, but Palmer sat frozen, blindsided by the devastating evidence. Would you like to revise your testimony? My lawyer pressed. Perhaps acknowledge that you were not, in fact, present that day, or that your mother was not, in fact, confused. Barbara's composure shattered completely. You don't understand what I've been through, she shouted, her performance giving way to genuine rage. I deserve that house. After everything I've done, everything I've endured, she was going to leave it all to me. It was promised to me. Then they turned her against me. The judge's decision came swiftly after that. The will would stand as written. The house would go to Carol and the grandchildren, as Alina had intended. Furthermore, an investigation would be opened into the financial irregularities Alina had mentioned in the video. But the victory was bittersweet. The case had exposed Barbara's true nature, certainly, her debts, her theft from her own mother, her lies, yet seeing her crumble in that courtroom brought me no joy, only a profound sadness for what might have been, for the mother I'd never really had. Barbara tried her usual tactics afterward. Tears, accusations of betrayal, claims that we'd manipulated Alina against her. This time, no one believed her. Even those who'd once enabled her behavior could no longer deny the evidence of who she truly was. The family fractured along new lines. Those who could no longer stomach Barbara's manipulation. Those few who still tried to make excuses for her. I positioned myself firmly in the former camp. No more forced family dinners. No more walking on eggshells. No more pretending. Grandma Alina eventually regained consciousness. Her recovery was slow, but her mind remained sharp. She moved in with Carol in the house that had nearly been stolen from her. Barbara received nothing beyond a small monthly stipend, as specified in the will. Not enough to maintain her lifestyle. Certainly not enough to cover her substantial debts. She lost more than money. She lost the power she'd held over the family for decades. The ability to control narratives, to manipulate emotions, to position herself at the center of every story. That was what truly broke her in the end. Not the loss of inheritance, but the loss of control. Some lessons come at a terrible price, but they're no less valuable for it. The truth always finds its way to the light. And when it does, you have a choice. Turn away and cling to comfortable lies, or face it, accept it, and begin to heal. I chose to heal, to build something real from the ashes of what was lost. And in the end, that's the greatest victory of all.